Good morning, everyone. It definitely feels like springtime today, and that means summer is not far off. So, we're getting into the time of year where we start to see baby wildlife when we're out and about in the deserts and the mountains. And so, Jeremy is going to tell us all about baby wildlife in today's Wildlife Facts Fast. Jeremy, take it away.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Jeremy Lane. I'm a public information specialist with the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish. And yeah, it's a great time of year. I thought it'd be fun to talk about wildlife babies, and specifically different, sometimes a little weird names that we give to wildlife babies. So let's take a look. Let's start with a gray fox, common visitor to urban yards. You can see them in cities and in wild areas alike. Gray fox babies are called pups, or maybe more appropriately, kits. Kind of neat. Next up, we've got walleye. If you've never had walleye, and you've heard people say that fish can taste like chicken, very likely candidate they were talking about is walleye. It is absolutely delicious. Try it sometime. Walleye are fish, right? So they come from eggs. When they first hatch out, they look really small like that, and then they get a little bit bigger, about the size of a finger. So they have a couple different names depending on their sizes, like other fish do. When they're those smaller swimmers, you'll call them fry. And then when they get to about the size of a finger, you'll call them a fingerling. What about snakes? Here we see a desert king snake, one of my favorites. You could probably call a young snake, especially if it's newborn, a neonate. You've heard of like a neonatal ward in a hospital, or you can use that term for wildlife too, when they're really young. Nine-banded armadillo. Do we have armadillo in New Mexico? Yeah, absolutely we do. It's in the southeast corner near the Texas Panhandle, but we do. Here's what they look like. We call their young also pups. And something interesting about nine-banded armadillo is that they almost always give birth to identical quadruplets. Almost always. Pretty interesting. What about bats? Bat young are also called pups. Looks like biologists didn't get very creative with their naming. We see pups a lot. What about coyote? They can also be called pups, but more uniquely, a unique term for a baby coyote could be a whelp. That's a cool one. Persian Ibex, introduced to the mountains of Deming, New Mexico, the Florida mountains. If you've never gone out and checked that out, it's pretty cool. There's a hunting opportunity for you. That's not very many places in North America that have Persian Ibex, and New Mexico is one of them. They're young, just like our babies, are called kids. What about porcupine? You ever heard of a baby porcupine? You could certainly call it a baby porcupine, but a more official name, believe it or not, is a porcupet. That's a weird one. You might be wondering, how are porcupines born with quills and not hurt the mother? Well, they are born with quills. They're just soft at birth, and they harden within a few days. Virginia opossum. We have possum in the state as well. Now, opossums have the distinction of being the only marsupial native to North America. And so if you'll think about another famous marsupial, the kangaroo, you will have guessed the name for the young of opossums, and that is joeys. Same thing as a baby kangaroo. What about bighorn sheep? Bighorn sheep, the name sheep gives it away a little bit there. You call the babies lambs. Turkey. Turkey have some fun ones. When they're really little, you call them poults. And then as they get a little bit older and you can distinguish male from female, the male young turkey are called jakes, and the female young turkey are called jennies, which is a little confusing for some people. Not to leave the invertebrates out, what about spiders? What do you call a baby spider? Here we see a wolf spider carrying her young on her back. We call them spiderlings. Beavers, lots of beaver in New Mexico. You can call them pups also. You can even call them kittens. That's a weird one. Our elk babies are called calves. They're spotted at birth, as you see there, to help hide them from predators. American pronghorn, their babies are called fawns. And deer, their young, also fawns. What about dove? Let's talk about some birds. There you see a mourning dove. If you didn't know, you can tell a mourning dove because of the black spots along its wing. You might try to remember that those are like teardrops, that this dove is in mourning. Baby mourning doves have a face only a mother could love, as you can see there. And they're called squabs or chicks. Barn owls. Barn owls are really cool. Did you know that barn owls are found on every continent except Antarctica? Very widespread. They give birth to typically 6 babies, but can be up to 9, and their young are called owlets. Something else really interesting about barn owl, the nest mates don't all hatch at the same time. So you'll have older siblings, and it's been documented that these older siblings will kind of bribe your younger siblings with food for the younger siblings to groom them. They'll trade food to get groomed. Before we get out of here, it's super important to remember that you should not pick up wildlife babies. Don't do it. Don't pretend that you know more than Mother Nature does. Let nature take its course. It might appear that parents are gone for a long time, maybe hours, maybe the better part of a day, but they're just out foraging most times. They're just gone and they've hidden their young safely away. Not for you to pick up. Baby birds might be seen on the ground this time of year, especially after high wind days, but that's not necessarily an emergency or disaster. They could be in this awkward phase where they're like developing their muscles to be able to fly, but they're not really quite there yet, and they could be there within hours or days. And they're probably very likely still attended by mom or dad who's bringing them food, but won't if you're there watching them. So leave them alone. If you can, if they're in danger of like another animal getting them, or maybe like ants getting onto them, you can put them back into the nest if possible. And something you might not know is that it's a myth that a mother bird will reject their babies because of their sin. That's a myth. I'm certain it's happened a time or two, but that's not true. It probably kept people from handling baby wildlife though, and that's a good. If you do see young wildlife in your yard, try to keep your dogs and your cats indoors or a different part of your yard to leave that wildlife alone. And hopefully they'll get mobile and they'll move on by themselves. So this spring, when we're enjoying this beautiful weather and you come across something like this, you see a deer fawn, or you see a nest of rabbits, or you see a baby bird on the ground, appreciate it, enjoy it, take a picture from a distance, and then leave it alone. Now, if you think that animal is in dire straits, you can call one of our area offices and we can advise you on what to do. But more often than not, folks, it just needs to be left alone. So that's our latest edition of Wildlife Facts Fast, talking about wildlife babies. And let's all do our part to keep wildlife wild, please.
Thanks, Jeremy. A lot of good information there. A lot of good wildlife facts fast. We hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. You all have a good weekend, and we'll see you right here next time on Wildlife Facts Fast.
Thanks for joining us, folks.